Hi, everyone. Pleasure to see you, so many of you on here this morning. Man, I just started coughing right before I came on here. I must have swallowed something a little bit wrong. And I'm like, I wish I could say I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, but I'm not because we had to go pick up one son from California this weekend because school started today, and he's been staying with his older brother. And so we got back last night about midnight, and then I had to wake up this morning, and now I'm up this morning on the air. But it was a good trip. We went sailing in the San Francisco Bay, and I have to say it was a little stressful for me when the sailboat is like tipping at a 45-degree angle going into the wind. Anyway, but I have my shake that I make for energy when I need it. This is actually a mixture of a little bit of coffee with some almond milk and cocoa powder and protein powder, which is like a smoothie with just a little bit of coffee in it. And I don't need a lot of coffee because too much gives me a buzz. But anyway, I wanted this morning, I didn't get an email about what I was going to talk about, but there's that cough. Okay. So I've been working on this chart, and I wanted to just share a little bit about this. I'm actually in the emotional healing class tonight. I'm going to be talking about aromatherapy. And this is the emotional healing aromatherapy chart. The list of oils is on the back. And on the front is this really nice, colorful aromatherapy wheel. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the energetics. And because this little chart is just a fabulous way to see energetics. So I actually have the visual here. It was much less attractive before my son David went to work on it. But I became fascinated with energetics and the 4-element model when I was working for Dr. C. Samuel West in the early 1980s. And Carl Robinson and I were dabbling with the Western 4-element model, and we played around with it a lot. We didn't actually know much about the 4-element tradition. We just actually got this. It was Carl who got the idea, came and shared with me what he'd figured out, and we just started creating things and created this 4-element model. And what I wanted to show you was the understanding of energetics, because I've found this whole understanding of energetics to be extremely useful, not just in physical healing and emotional healing, but in everything. Because what we figured out in the early 80s, Carl and I, is that you could apply this to anything. We applied the 4 elements to music theory. We applied it to physics. We applied it to all kinds of different subjects. We looked at the taste buds, the seasons of the year, on and on and on and on, and just found over and over again that there was this incredible overlap of understanding about it. So what you see at the center is the yin yang symbol, and in traditional Chinese medicine, water is yin and fire is yang, which is why you see the model oriented with the black, which is the yin, to the water side, and the white, which is the yang, to the fire side, and and so the idea of yin and yang and this whole thing that I think is something that I figured out that most people didn't, is that this is not a static model. This is a rotating model. In fact, you see on the outside how the arrows go around. There's a direction of rotation. Water moving to air, air moving to fire, fire moving to earth, and so forth. And it's like the times of the day and the seasons of the year. And so if you think of it like this, night and day, winter and summer, the male and female, that's the idea of yin and yang, that there appears to be a duality in everything. But in reality, it's always day somewhere and it's always night somewhere, because the earth is rotating. So part of the earth is in shadow and part of the earth is in light. And I was just watching this very interesting video by a group that called the Electric Universe, and they had their conference, and I saw one of the speakers there, and he was talking about the electromagnetic energy that's coming from the sun in waves, in kind of like packets of electromagnetic energy that actually come from the sun out to the different planets. And he was explaining how the Earth, as the sun or this Earth moves into the sun, there's a huge amount of electrical energy that gets absorbed into the Earth in the morning. And and that's interesting to me, because if you've ever noticed, morning is a time when naturally things, wake up, become energized. I know for me, morning is one of the best times for me to get inspiration and ideas and so forth. And then things tend to wind down in the evening. And and he was saying that in the evening, the Earth actually gives off that electrical energy. In other words, it absorbs it in the morning and it gives it off in the evening, and it goes farther out into space. In other words, as it rotates towards the sun, it absorbs the electrical energy, and then as a part of it that is moving away from the sun, spins that electrical energy off farther out into space. And so there are the four parts of the day are really day, night, morning, and evening. And that is what correlates to the four elements, this constant rotation of energies that are taking place. The time of rest, the yin energy, or the water energy, is the time of rest. It correlates also with the winter in the seasons of the year, and then summer would be the time of the fire element, and also daytime. And then air is the transition from water, or from yin to yang. So it is the morning, it is the spring, it just as the energy comes up in the morning. And forgive me, I'm just a little bit tired, so I'm not like talking quite as efficiently as I usually do. But the energy comes up in the spring. It springs up, comes up in the morning, and then it tapers off and dies down in the fall as things go back into a state of rest with the earth. And so we're entering to the fall cycle. So there's a cycle of energy that we go through, and all of these things are constantly there. It's just that we experience them in cycles. And then so that's what's illustrated in the center, is this idea of the relationship between the four elements and the Chinese model of yin and yang. And what you have with the four elements is you have an axis of two different opposing qualities, two different yin-yang opposite qualities. One of them is hot and cold, which relates to the idea of hot being very active. So like when you talk about heat, when something heats up, the molecules move more quickly. So it's more energized, where something that's cold is more sedated. The molecules don't move around as much. So cold really means less active. So heat is activity, then cold is inactivity. And then you have the concept of damp and dry. Damp meaning not just like moist, but damp as in the quality of water, that it's fluid and flexible, right? It yields, it moves, it changes shape, right? Dry, as in being rigid, not not yielding, not changing shape, more fixed. So the four elements basically are created out of those qualities. Water is cold and damp. It is passive. It is fluid. So water takes the shape of whatever container you put it in. Water has its own power, but it's got this passive yielding nature to it. Whereas fire is very active and very rigid, okay? It doesn't yield to things. Air is damp and hot, meaning it's very active and very, very yielding. And earth is cold and dry, meaning it's very rigid and very, very passive in terms of not being highly energized or active. And that's what creates these different quadrants. So what this model is the petals of the flower are basically designed to show the qualities. And since this version was for the essential oils, it's related to some words that we use to describe the actions of various essential oils. So I'll start with the damp area. Okay, so in terms of essential oils, this is ethereal, meaning it makes you more open, more yielding, more creative, more open to new ideas, more up in your head, more imaginative, that kind of thing. That is the mixture. Ethereal is the mixture of water and air. And water and air make mist, as in mystical. All right? Okay? So, or up in the clouds, or airy-fairy up in the clouds, that kind of idea that takes place. Then air, of course, is the breath of life. It is revitalizing. It is refreshing. So the quality of essential oils that would be that way is refreshing. They open you up. They make it so that you can breathe freely. And then stimulating means it warms up. It activates things, so it makes things move faster. It moves things, and that is air plus fire. So if you are going to try to make a really, really hot fire, you make a bellows and you blow a lot of air into it, and that heats up the fire and makes the fire even hotter. The air blows in and stimulates the fire, and then that goes into the fire, which is, warming, invigorating. It gets things moving and so forth, and then you go into the mixture of the fire and the earth. So when you take earth and you apply fire, think of it as like a brick. Or pottery. When you put pottery in a kiln and you subject it to heat, you make it very, very solid, very dense, like a brick or a piece of pottery. So that's dry, very dry earth. And that's also very grounding, very stable, very solid. And notice that's the opposite of ethereal. Ethereal, up in the clouds, daydreamy, blah, blah, blah. The grounding, solid, realistic, practical, that sort of thing. Those are opposing concepts. Then you move around to cold and dry, which is the earth. And earth, being opposite of air, is sultry or kind of sensual. It means being caught up in the material world, being sensual. It has to do with enjoying the body, the pleasure of sexuality, all that sort of thing. Very opposite of being kind of awakened, opened up. It's being very down and relaxed and into your body, like you feel when someone gives you a really good massage. Then you move around the wheel again a little bit, and the cold area is the mixture of earth and water. What do you get when you get earth and water? You get mud. It's kind of sticky. If you ever had to walk in mud, it's like blop blop blop. Okay, it's cooling, meaning it it reduces activity. It slows you down. That's why the word narcotic is there. It slows you down, makes you less active, opposite of stimulating. You can be overstimulated and you need to be slowed down. And then you go around, of course, to the water quadrant, and that's the opposite of fire, which is calming, soothing, that sort of thing. So this is the whole thing with the four elements. This is kind of a fun thing to play with, and I thought I'd share with it. And we're working on getting this and another chart. We have a chart. This is all for the emotional healing classes we're doing, but this one is for the essential oils. And I'm not going to have time to talk in great detail when I teach tonight about the four elements and that part of the chart. So I don't know. I just want to talk about the four elements and yin and yang and the whole idea of the 8 quadrants that you get from that. So you see, you're starting with 2, you're going to 4, then you're going to 8, and then actually have 16 different qualities of essential oils on the actual aromatherapy chart. The one I'm showing on that, and that's what I'm going to be talking about tonight. So you have, for example, the hot oils are camphorous and sulfuric, and the invigorating oils spicy and sharp, and then grounding is resinous and earthy, and then balsamic and musky, and then woody and citrusy, fruity. Sweet and floral are the ones in the water element, and fresh and herbaceous, the ones in the ethereal area. And it's really fascinating just to play with. And like I said, this is just one of the many, many applications I've made of this. And so this applies to so many things. I've applied this, with herbs. I've done, like I said, energetic models on just numerous things that go way beyond just physical healing. And I think it's really fascinating because everything is energy, everything is vibrating. And so this pattern of vibration of the yin absorbing, reaching fullness with the air, contracting with the fire, becoming calm with the earth, and then starting over again, just like the beat of your heart or the breathing in of your lungs. The four elements actually represent energetically expansion, which is yin or water, change, which is air, contraction, which is fire, and equilibrium or rest, which is earth. And it goes on and on. But anyway, I'm really pleased with this, and it's looking really nice, and we will hopefully have that for sale very soon. So I'm going to turn the screen share off, and someone asked a question, so we'll get to some of the questions people have and then go forth. Someone says, during the day, my tongue will turn bluish red. When I first get up in the morning, it's light peak with white coating. What do you think caused that? Bluish red would actually be a little bit of, I'd have to look that up for sure, but bluish cast to the tongue is typically a circulatory kind of problem, that you're getting a little bit of issue with blood flow, which is interesting that it happens during the day. I don't know. I'd have to talk more about that to kind of figure out what that really means. Because I've never heard of that happening, like, during the day. When these charts are done, there's one chart for the essential oils, and it shows the essential oils, by the way, for 12 emotional energy centers, as well as just this wheel showing how the different oils also work on the different emotions. But there's also one with the flower essences and question affirmations for the emotional healing too. And I think they'll be $12 each. They'll be laminated too. They won't be like this. Anyway, Now, someone just says, I'm the opposite. I'm not a morning person. I get more done later in the day. And this is because everybody energetically, you have your own kind of personality. And so one of the oldest personality typing systems is the 4-element personality typing system. And I've actually seen that these types given different names, but they overlap quite a bit. And so depending on your energy, you're likely to be most energized at the time of the day that matches your personality type. But nonetheless, there's a natural tendency to wake up in the morning and then calm down in the evening and be most active during the day and then rest at night. Not that we don't screw that up with travel and with, night shifts and all that sort of thing, but that's the natural cycle of things. But your creativity might very much depend on your personality. I know, for example, that I get most of my inspiration and ideas in the morning, and that's when I'm most open to intuition. But the evening, as you unwind, is also a possible thing, because the interesting thing is that when you're really active and caught up in activity, you're not listening. So it's in the quieter times of the day, the times of transition, that you're most likely to get ideas and inspiration. Okay, so someone said, would you blend a water with an air to get a more mystical blend for prayer listening? I'm thinking. Yeah, actually, the fresh or herbaceous oils, and because there's one of the things I was trying to point out on this chart is that there's a direction of flow. So over here, right here in the water quadrant, is your floral oils, the ones that are really like flowery, like rose and jasmine, lavender, that sort of thing. They're very calming, but they open you up, okay? Because yin is expansive. It allows you to take in and open up. And that means it moves you, it starts you there, and the oil then moves you in that direction. So it starts in the calming and moves you into the more open ethereal. So chamomile, for example, is somewhat floral and also fresh. And so those oils open you up to be more creative, more open to ideas, and so forth. Interestingly enough, a lot of the oils that are used to aid meditation are actually the opposite effect, because they're grounding. They pull you down, they get you relaxed, they get you into this very calm, stable state. And also some of these oils have a quality where they've got a little of one end and the other end. In other words, they actually embody in the fragrance the polarity of both. So some of the oils will actually open you up at the same time they ground you. So they help you to bring your ideas into reality. It's kind of interesting. I'm gonna, like I said, talk about that tonight in my class, but the patterns to me are really, really fascinating, and just playing with them and understanding how they work is a really big thing. People who work night shifts, that is a challenge. Their morning is not the sunrise, and really working night shifts is very hard on people because it really upsets the natural rhythm of the body and of life. And one of the things that's upsetting the natural rhythm of life is, TV, computers, cell phones, and artificial lighting. Because if you think about it, if you're out in nature, all right, and you're camping, let's say, when it comes time that the sun goes down, you typically have got your fire, and your fire is in the kind of red, lower vibrations, which are much more grounding, and you start to wind down. You feel this winding down, and the darkness stimulates your pineal gland to produce melatonin, which starts making you feel sleepy, and you have this natural tendency to want to go to sleep. And then when the light comes up in the morning, it starts waking you up. So but we have artificial lighting, we have cell phones and TVs, and they actually tend to give off a higher spectrum, more in the blue range, and that particular wavelengths of light actually interfere with the ability of the brain to produce melatonin. So one of the worst things you can do if you're suffering from insomnia is to watch TV, play on the computer, be on your cell phone, because it's actually keeping you awake. It's keeping your body from unwinding and going to sleep. It's much better to turn out all the lights. I actually wear, when I figured this out, I first of all darkened my room so that it was pitch black, and I took out all pilot lights. There was no source of light in my room because I was having trouble sleeping. And when I completely made my room pitch black, I was able to sleep much more soundly and longer. Now, my wife didn't like the way I had it shut it out, so she put in lighter curtains and whatever. And so now I wear those little eye masks. I put it over my eyes at night, and that helps me sleep much more soundly because it blocks out all the light. And I also, because I was having a hard time getting everybody to go to bed, I got this thing on the Wi-Fi at the house, and basically it allows me to schedule when the Wi-Fi is available, and I basically have it so it shuts off. Right now that they're going to school, before it was shut off at 11, now they're going to school, I've set it to shut off at 10, so nobody can get on. The TV isn't hooked, because we live out in the country. It's actually hooked to the internet, so you can't watch TV if the internet's not active. So at 10 o'clock, the TV shuts off, the Wi-Fi shuts off, everything shuts off, because I'm trying to get everybody to unwind and go to bed so I can go to sleep and not have everybody staying awake, staring at their cell phones, blah, blah, blah. And it does help. It has made a difference since I've been doing that, just as an interesting thing. So if I had to work night shifts once, and I'm not sure what to tell you, although I think that you do need to maybe try to during the day, when to shut out the light as much as possible for sleep. So if darken the room that they're in as much as possible, have them wear the eye mask or whatever to shut out the sounds, so at least they can get a little bit better circadian rhythm going. What do I recommend to oxygenate blood and tissues? I think besides deep breathing, of course, I really do think that liquid chlorophyll really, really helps oxygen. Someone I knew told me that her dad was in the hospital with lung problems, and he was hooked to an oxygen monitor. So, and he was on oxygen, and he was hooked to a monitor showing his blood level of oxygen. And so you could see, where his level of oxygen was in the blood. And when they wouldn't let her give him anything, but she would rub liquid chlorophyll on his feet. And I have no idea what the mechanism of action for that is, but she would actually see, when she did that, the blood levels of oxygen go up. And I have seen people who are looking kind of very tired and pale, giving them some liquid chlorophyll and water, and watching the color come up in their face and their energy come up. And so I've never been able to document or figure out the action for that, but just from personal experience, I found as a quick picker up, there's something about chlorophyll that helps the blood carry oxygen better, and I have no idea why. So that's just a quick little suggestion. I'm familiar with the 7 rays of creation. Typing elements with the rays and oils is sometimes helpful. Well, the idea of the 7 rays of creation is, okay, let me explain the whole notion of energetics as I understand it. With the latest discoveries of quantum physics, we now understand, or at least what the quantum physics is saying, is that there is no matter in the universe. What we think of as matter is only vibrations. Everything is composed of vibrations. There's I gave a webinar on this last week to my members, and I went into explaining this whole thing because it's really fascinating to me. But the whole idea of atom was that when scientists were learning about the universe, they found that there were certain elements, certain substances that could not be reduced into other substances, and they called those elements. Like this is the periodic table of elements: hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, etc. Right? And they supposed that meant that the universe was composed of these elements, and that the little particles of them they called atoms, meaning the smallest particle. Well, then it was discovered that atoms are actually composed of smaller particles, protons, neutrons, electrons, and that it was the electrical properties that made the different elements of the different atoms. Well, as it gets into subatomic, and by the way, one of the things I pointed out is that if a hydrogen atom, which is 1 electron and 1 proton, was blown up to the size of the Earth, all right? So the electron is running around the surface of the Earth, right? Okay. And you know how big the proton would be? 600 feet across. Everything else would be empty. There'd be nothing there. A molecule is like 99.999999999, something like that, empty space. But then they discover that the electron and these other things are actually and composed of little other particles, but they discovered those particles aren't even particles. They're little waves. They're little vibrations. They're little like ripples on a pond. That's all they are. So everything in the universe is just little ripples everywhere. And that's why I think energetics is fascinating, because everything is composed of ripples. So vibrations like music and color and sound all basically become a metaphor for understanding how the universe is put together. My friend Royland, who taught me the tree of life that I based my 12 emotional energy center model of the body on, basically says there are 2 string theories. One is that there are 10 subatomic strings and 10 strings, and the other one that there are 22. Well, there are 10 major spheres and 22 pathways in the tree of life, which is really fascinating. He's played with that stuff far more than I have. But it basically suggests that there's a pattern. There's a pattern of creation that mirrors the pattern of music, that mirrors the pattern of language, that mirrors the pattern of color. And therefore, we can learn a lot about how the universe is put together, like a giant symphony of vibrations everywhere. So the 7 rays, of course, are when white light, which has all of the wavelengths of light, goes through a prism, it splits into the rainbow, the 7 major colors, which is the same thing as the 7 major notes on a musical scale, and on and on and on and on. So you can see I'm really, really out there. Okay, someone says the top of my arm near the shoulder hurts, aches a lot, even when I okay, they didn't say anything. Okay, even when I'm not using it. Top of the shoulder, arm near the shoulder. So so what you're doing is you're taking an anti-inflammatory for it, but whenever you're dealing with something like that, you have to get into what's causing. I mean, first of all, what I want to know is, do you have a restricted range of motion? You know, are you able to move it freely, or is it like locking up at any point? That's number one thing I'd like to know. And if it's not locking up, then what you have to do when you look at the body is you can't just look at the shoulder that's hurting. You got to look at how the structure of the body as a whole is balanced and see where the problem is. Because a lot of times if you're having problems with your shoulder or your arm, it's actually in your neck, with your spine or your neck being out of alignment and putting pressure on the nerves going down there. And so you've got to fix that. The source of the pain is not always where you feel the pain. And one of the things to be aware of is that internal organs have no pain receptors. So when there's an internal organ that's having a problem, it basically will sometimes create what's called referred pain, which means you'll feel the pain somewhere in your muscles that's actually coming from something inside. And I don't know, right? If it's on the right shoulder, this area right here often is related to the ileocecal valve in the colon. And I'd have to go pull out some of my charts, you know, like touch for health charts, to see what meridians that's on. But I'm trying to remember. I think this particular muscle right here that you use in muscle testing is on the lung meridian. So you always have to evaluate the body as a whole. You can't just look at the one little part and say, well, this is hurting. You got to, well, what else is going on everywhere else in the body, and try to figure out where that's coming from. Liquid chlorophyll, it doesn't really matter which kind you use. The new chlorophyll doesn't have the preservatives in it because they used glycerin to help preserve it instead of the parabens, and I recommend that that one just for that reason. Okay, I think it's just fine. It's the chlorophyll itself, not the glycerin or whatever that's with it, or the peppermint or spearmint oil that's used to flavor it, that has that effect. My first video on the prophecy politics and whatever was done last Wednesday, and I'm doing another one this Wednesday, and I'm doing it 4 Wednesdays in a row. If it's well received, I'm going to do more, because there's a lot more I want to say about that. But no, the next one will be coming up this Wednesday. Let's see. Anything else anybody's put in here? No. Okay. So while I'm looking to see if anybody else writes in anything, I have been listening to a biography of Benjamin Franklin, and I'm just, what a fascinating life that man lived. And what an interesting, colorful character he was, as well as the fact that he, that you, in listening to his autobiography, not his autobiography, this biography written about him, I can see how much the whole American culture was embodied in that man. But one of the things that I think was interesting, he started off being very attracted to vegetarianism, and then he was on a ship and there wasn't like much food to eat, and they caught some fish, and he justified that he would eat the fish since he was hungry. And after that, he developed a philosophy of not being fanatical. And I really like that, because I think a lot of times people who are in the natural health field get really rabidly dogmatic and fanatical, to the point that they lose a sense of balance in their lives. I mean, you can't, if you're like constantly worried about environmental toxins, and you're afraid to eat, anything because of this and that and the other, and this is bad for you and that's bad for you or whatever. I think people are, get into a mindset that's just not healthy by getting overly worried about that. I am concerned about it. I avoid toxins. I try to use natural pest controls and that sort of thing. But I'm also of the practical enough mindset that I realize that sometime you're going to be exposed to that. Or like I'm traveling yesterday, and and so you maybe don't eat quite as healthy as you do normally, but I've just learned not to worry about it. I mean, worry is worse for you than eating a hamburger, once in a while. I mean, it's just you want to make sure that you're trying to live a healthy life. You're trying to live a well-life, but you've also got to realize that sometimes you make accommodations or whatever. And I have often adhered to the philosophy: it's not what you do once in a while that matters so much with your health, as it's what you do constantly, as a regular run-of-the-mill thing. Okay, let's see. Do you think that hormones can create emotions, or do they just facilitate the release of emotions already there, such PMS and menopause? I feel like they help us feel and release emotions, but some people think it's just the hormones causing us to feel angry, sad, etc., and they aren't our real emotions. Okay. That is a great question. That's a great question. I firmly believe that it's consciousness that affects the material world. This is what quantum physics is saying. And the basic idea of modern psychiatry is that there's no, what they say, ghost in the machine. In other words, that the body is purely a mechanical device, and therefore it is the neurotransmitters, it is the hormones, it is the chemical messengers. They create the emotions. And therefore, okay, if you're depressed or you're sad or you're upset or whatever, it's a biochemical imbalance. And therefore, okay, you correct it by altering the chemical messengers with some kind of drugs or whatever. I believe that there is a ghost in the machine. I believe we have a soul. I believe that our spirit, our soul that inhabits our body, has consciousness and awareness and so forth. Now, I do believe that that there is a relationship between our physical body and our soul in terms of emotions, that there's a balance there. What we focus our mind on and what we believe in terms of the beliefs and things we adopt does affect us emotionally. And that affects the neurotransmitters and hormones and things that we give off. But also, the body is designed to give us feedback. So I believe that that there are two kinds of basic feedback that we get. One is from our physical body, which causes things like pain and hunger and thirst and fatigue and whatever, to tell us what we physically need. To tell us you need to sleep, you need to rest, you need to eat, blah, blah. And so we need to learn to pay attention to the body. The body doesn't, tell us in words, I'm hungry. It tells us by growlings in our stomach. It doesn't tell us I'm thirsty in words. It tells us I'm thirsty because my mouth gets dry and I start to crave water. So there are physical sensations that the body is making to communicate to us, to our consciousness, that it needs things. But there's also a soul level of that, a heart level of that, an emotional level of that. And I believe that our emotions are also telling us how we're out of balance, how our belief systems aren't working for us, how the thoughts we're thinking are constructive or destructive. And so I think that when we're, pursuing certain thoughts and certain courses of action, that causes chemicals to be released into our body. And those chemicals make us feel unhappy and uncomfortable and upset and irritable and blah, 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 all as a way, just like hunger and thirst, to communicate that there's something inside of us that we need to look at, pay attention to, and we need to work out in our soul. And that's my basis of what I call emotional healing, is that you can't just try to change the chemical messengers, because the chemical messengers, there's a reason that they're behaving that way. And it has to do with something of the way we're living our life, the way we're thinking, the state of our beliefs or so forth. And so you need to look deeper, just like the person who was saying the pain in their shoulder. You have to look deeper and try to figure out, where is this coming from? Because it's not just the pain or the emotional upset or whatever. It's something deeper than that. And I think that if we adjust our thoughts and we fix the belief systems and that sort of thing, then we will actually change the chemical messengers and hormones. So let me just close the door here. Someone just came in. Okay, someone says, the past 3 days I've had a pain on my neck, down my shoulder blade on my left side. Can't turn my neck well. Pain reduces when I burp. That's really interesting. Okay, because one of the things that can happen is if you start to get a lot of gas and bloating down here and your stomach is up a little bit, have a little bit of a sliding hiatal hernia, it actually puts stress on your heart. And when you're getting pain in your shoulder and down your left side, that can be an indication there's stress in your heart. And if it relieves when you burp, then you may really have like a hiatal hernia. And I've seen working on the hiatal hernia and getting the stomach down actually help certain problems with the heart, like sometimes a little bit of tachycardia or arrhythmia, to actually be corrected. Now, I can't say for sure that that's the case with you, because I don't have you in front of me. I can't, check you out. But yeah, I mean, the digestive system with gas or pressure can put pressure on the heart and create, pain and discomfort, by creating stress on the heart. So that's entirely problem. Okay, someone said, I feel like they help us feel and release. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I do. I think that feeling is important. I just want to just say something. I think feelings are very, very important. And the reason, and when I do my next, one of the things I was doing with this prophecy, politics, or whatever, is talking about, what I learned with, about ritualistic abuse and everything. And ritualistic abuse is designed to make it so you don't feel. So you become so numb that you don't feel. And the problem is when you stop feeling, when you stop listening to your body and listening to your heart, okay, then, and you're only dealing rationally, you can rationalize anything, okay? You can rationalize yourself to do anything. You can come up with a mental justification to do just about anything. Your heart is your moral compass. Your heart has the capability to tune in and empathize, have compassion. Your heart is what can sense how your actions are affecting other people and the world around you. And so when you are in tune, in harmony with other people and with your environment, you feel a sense of peace and a sense of love and a sense of connection and so forth. When you're upset and agitated and irritated or angry or blah, 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 either you're not taking good care of your body and your body is responding by not functioning well for you, in which case you need to look at your diet and are you getting enough rest and all that sort of thing. Or it may be that your attitudes and the way you're approaching life is disharmonious, out of harmony with other people, and so forth. I think that like you said, PMS in women, they're releasing trapped emotions that are already there, okay? Because a lot of women, for example, a lot of times we bury angry feelings, right? Because we don't know how to constructively deal with anger, so we're trying to be nice, right? But then along comes the period and your hormones shift and whatever, and all that anger comes out, all right? Because it hasn't been dealt with constructively, it winds up being dealt with in a not constructive way, comes bursting out. So I think that we have to get in touch with that and understand why those feelings are there and learn how to deal with them constructively. And the thing that I figured out when I started doing emotional healing work is that I had never, ever in anything, in my church, in school, in my family, no one had ever helped me understand what my emotions mean, what they were trying to tell me, how to work with them constructively. You either get told that you should stuff it because you shouldn't feel that way, or you get told it's somebody else's fault. And either way, you're completely disempowered because you're not paying attention to what your own heart and your own body are telling you, or you're saying that the only way that I can fix it is other people have to change. And if other people have to change for me to be happy, then I'm completely disempowered. And what I'm saying is that all that inability and all that programming for us to ignore our emotions is to make us more, how do I say this? More able to be manipulated. The less in touch we are with our own feelings and the less we understand about our own heart and our own body, the more we can easily be manipulated by other people who try to tell us what to think and what to believe and what to do. And we don't have the internal understanding to be able to deal with that. Okay, so yeah, I thought I did answer that. The next prophecy politics video will be on Wednesday at 5:00. If you signed up, you should get an email about that. The new liquid chlorophyll is the one, I think, is the one with glycerin. The old chlorophyll didn't have glycerin. I don't, I have to go look on I have to go look on my database just to make sure what it's called, because I can't remember what it's called. But the chlorophyll, okay. Yeah, it's the chlorophyll ES that has glycerin in it. And glycerin, by the way, I did a lot of research on glycerin back in the 80s because I was experimenting a lot with Carl and I in making herbs that were glycerin extract. And glycerin is a component of fats, and even though it tastes sweet, it doesn't disrupt your blood sugar. You actually, to get any negative effects from it, you'd have to drink a pint a day for 30 days. So a little teeny bit of chlorophyll, a little glycerin in the chlorophyll, it's not going to cause problems with fungal infections. It's not going to upset your blood sugar. It's not going to be anything. I think glycerin's a wonderful natural preservative. So let's see. Did I miss any other questions? Let's see. Nope, that looks like that's it. Well, we're about to the end of our time. And so thanks for joining me. I hope you kind of found this at least interesting with the 4 elements, because yes, I recommend the chlorophyll with glycerin. I think it's actually a better form of it because you don't have the preservatives. And I also appreciate all the questions people ask. I enjoy answering your questions. I know that, when someone asks me a question about a specific issue, it's very hard because, like I said, when I'm actually working with someone one-on-one, I can take time to ask a lot of questions, really get to the root of it. I just, when I went out there, my new daughter-in-law has been having a little bit of problems, and I used muscle testing to kind of isolate what it was, and little feeling and so forth, and which I couldn't do with her over the phone. I literally tried to ask her questions over the phone, but I really couldn't figure out. She was getting a pain on the right side of her abdomen, and I couldn't figure out where it was. When I went and I actually was able to physically examine her and do some muscle testing and some other things, I finally figured out it was coming from her ovary. And so I was able to actually, recommend something specifically to work on her ovary. But before that, I wasn't sure whether it was, her colon or her kidney or whatever. So you have to kind of sometimes dig in a little bit to find out where the real cause of this thing. So anyway, thanks again for joining me. 2 weeks from now, I didn't get an email out about what I was going to talk about this week because of the hecticness of the last week and going on the weekend, but I'll send out an email to everybody who's registered for these next week about what I'm going to talk about in 2 weeks. And I hope some of you are enjoying the emotional healing class. And tonight I'm going to talk about my first one about essential oils, and then I'll have another follow-up on essential oils the week after that. And I'm realizing I really could teach a lot longer classes on essential oils and aromatherapy. So we'll see what the interest is. Everybody have a great day. The registry for the prophecy. You can email me and I'll send you the link. Webinars at treelight.com. It's the email I think that I use for these things. I'm just going to type it in. And also I put it up on my Facebook page. I didn't widely promote it because it's so off topic of health, and it's also so controversial what I'm talking about. And if you do register for it, I highly recommend that before you watch the webinar on Wednesday, that you watch the one I did last week, because it lays the groundwork for what I'm talking about. I'm talking about current events and what I believe is going on, based on stuff I learned from doing emotional healing work with people who were ritualistically abused, and then discovered that what I was spiritually shown was true when I was friends of an ex-CIA agent for 8 years. And that leads into the weird ideas I have about what's going on in the world. So anyway, along with, my study of scripture. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, it's not about health, okay? and you're not going to be offended by somebody else's, belief system, then register for that. I just wanted to get the information out about it. All right, everybody, have a good day, and I'll catch you again in 2 weeks.